low carb and fasting advocate with over 1 million followers on social media, where she shares how low carb nutrition and therapeutic fasting have positively impacted her life and her patients' lives. So, may I call Dr. Josephine Grace Rohotan to present and discuss confusions on saturated fat, cholesterol, and cardiovascular disease.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for that introduction. So my topic for today is confusions on saturated fats, cholesterol, and cardiovascular disease. This is a topic that usually can span in days when it comes to discussion, but I will just make the most out of our time and lump it into a 30-minute discussion. So disclaimer, I have no financial obligations to disclose. And this is the outline of my topic. So moving forward with our first topic, saturated fats and cholesterol. When did they become our enemy? So for the longest time in our generation, my generations and your generation, it's always been avoid cholesterol and saturated fats, right? This idea is something that we grew up with. However, if we are to remember what our great-grandparents did, they were never concerned of eating lard, eating pork fats, eating beef fat, even using it on a day-to-day basis. However, and with that, you can see that they also have less incidence of heart disease as compared to what we have now. Heart disease can now be heard even amongst 30 years old, 40 years old, something that was not founded long time ago. Philippine biculture and food practices are highly influenced by the United States, and there's a reason why I state that. Because in 1955, President Eisenhower had a heart attack, and with that, he called the most brilliant, most known scientist to investigate, because this is the first time that someone so famous had a heart attack. And this is where Dr. Ansel Keys came in. He published a 7-country study which says that the higher the saturated fat intake, there's also higher incidence of heart disease among these 7 countries. However, as much as we want to believe that, that is not the case, because the truth is he only cherry-picked those countries that supported his claim. There are actually other countries that didn't support this, but he deliberately did not include that in the results. Instead, he made a conclusion that blamed saturated fats consumption for heart disease. And he did not mention the rate of cigarette smoking among these countries or margarine intake, which is highest among the top 4 countries mentioned in this study. Now we know, thanks to Sir Marco's discussion a while ago, how margarine is really toxic for us. So these countries are just cherry-picked to support his claim, yet still, even up to now, he is still considered as a hero of modern medicine. And lo and behold, comes 1961, American Heart Association already suggested to remove or limit saturated fat intake and replace it with polyunsaturated oil to fight heart disease. The US Dietary Guidelines published this famous food pyramid, wherein it is something I think we know by heart even if we didn't study it, because it's something that we grew up with again. Emphasizing on lowered animal fat, you can see them on the top part of the pyramid, and bulking up on grains, starches, and other carbs. The United States made a committee on nutrition and human needs where the gist would be reduce consumption of fats, switch from saturated fats to vegetable fats, also known as seed oils now, reduce cholesterol to 1 egg per day, and eat more carbohydrates, especially grains. This one garnered support both in the government section and also in the private food industry, wherein there's food bill that support farmers to grow more GMOs in the form of soy and corn and other grains. And the AHA, or American Heart Association, also received funding even up to this day from these major food industries. And This is an example of the food pyramid for Filipinos. This is adapted for 0 to 6 months old, up to 18 years old and adults. And now, can you believe there's already sugar, noodles, and up to 6 cups of rice in a normal Filipino diet. That is a recommendation. So what's the result? Filipinos and majority of the world adapted it. We avoided animal fats, even coconut oil, ate more of the grains, bread, and the allowable amount of added sugars became blurry. Soft drinks, fruit juices, cereals, chips, biscuits now became a norm. And what is its effect when it comes to cardiovascular disease? Ever since the 1977 Food Guidelines was published, look at the trend of the increasing incidence of obesity. And comes obesity, also the increased trend of heart disease. So there's a direct correlation. With increased consumption of vegetable or factory-made oils or seed oils, there is also less in the consumption of animal fats. However, look at the graph on the heart disease. It keeps on rising. And with heart disease now is seen to be 1 in every 4 US deaths caused by heart disease, and that is also not far from the statistics of the rest of the world, which is highly influenced by the US Dietary Guidelines. So what is the current evidence on saturated fats and cholesterol intake? So in 2011, Cochrane study showed that there's actually no clear effects of dietary fat changes on total mortality and cardiovascular disease, on cardiovascular mortality and total all-cause mortality. So it's not really what you eat and the amount of fats and saturated fats that will dictate your heart disease. This is also supported by another study and 1,000 more. So this study is a 5 to 23-year study involving more than 347,000 members or participants, showing that there's really no association between increased risk of cardiac heart disease, stroke, CVD, consideration age, sex, study, and study quality did not change in this whole time. And we can see here that despite the published 7-country study that was very influential long ago, it was not found to be true. There are a lot of researchers who tried to replicate the study, but they simply cannot replicate the results, and now we know because it was a faulty one. So again, reminder, with the decreased consumption of animal fats, that is including healthy, natural, saturated fats, which involves coconut oil, the higher also the incidence of heart disease. So it's an inverse correlation that is directly contradicting what we always believe. So in conclusion, in this part, Keys was wrong. Dr. Ansel Keys was wrong. Fat in the diet does not cause heart disease, and the diet heart hypothesis is just faulty. But how about LDL? We always hear it as the bad cholesterol and HDL as the good cholesterol. However, I think you are more educated than many in our country and many in the world that actually LDL is just simply a type of cholesterol. You cannot really label it as bad on its own. You have to look at the other associated findings when you have higher LDL, say for example, higher triglycerides, higher HbA1c, and higher markers of inflammation. And what they can see, LDL lowers with vegetable oil intake. That's why it became so popular. And they were afraid because LDL also elevates with natural saturated fats intake. And that's their only premise. That's why they tried to make us become so fearful of these saturated fats. However, what the study show, we now see that higher LDL cholesterol are actually associated with greater longevity. Yes, LDL may increase with saturated fat intake, but it doesn't mean it will make you live less. This is a study on more than 6 million people. And LDL is not created equal. LDL may just be termed as bad cholesterol, but it's actually a wide range. There are different types, and the types of LDL that we should fear is the small type or small LDL or the pattern B. They will weigh the same as compared to the pattern A, but the pattern B will be very prone to oxidation, and this one will be the one that will cause inflammation. In simpler terms, the pattern B LDL will be the one that will clog your arteries and not the pattern A. And good thing, saturated fat intake, healthy saturated fat intake will increase your pattern A and not pattern B. So other markers that we should look, and not just LDL, it should actually be the triglycerides to HDL cholesterol ratio, and also the remnant cholesterol, which are now proven to be a better marker of cardiovascular disease rather than just LDL. In fact, if you will compute your remnant cholesterol, the higher your LDL level, the lower your remnant cholesterol, because remnant cholesterol is computed by taking your total cholesterol minus HDL minus LDL. So again, it's not the only thing that will matter. Look at also the trend on cigarette smoking. So that result was very biased because now we know more when it comes to cardiovascular disease, that it's not just the saturated fats that we should look into, but the other unhealthy habits that may actually involve more when it comes to the overall outcome. And cigarette smoking, and as what Sir Marco mentioned a while ago, it's actually the seed oils that will produce more of that inflammatory markers leading to inflammation, leading into cardiovascular disease. And another thing that we want to emphasize, although this is mostly on the topic of cholesterol and saturated fat, is also the finding that glycated hemoglobin A1C as a risk factor of cardiovascular outcomes and all-cause mortality in diabetics and non-diabetic populations actually proved to be an important marker, an important association, wherein the higher the blood sugar, the higher is the risk of cardiovascular disease. So there is also an impact when it comes to too much sugar in your body. It can actually produce those inflammatory kind of cholesterol, even if you will not take in cholesterol, because our body can create cholesterol. Cholesterol, saturated fats, it is healthy when it is natural and when it is taken together with other non-inflammatory food items. So instead of just lowering our animal fat intake or saturated fat intake and cholesterol intake, we actually need to lower everything that spikes our blood sugar. So when I say everything that spikes our blood sugar, it's not the sugar, it's not just the soft drinks, it's not just the pastries, it's not just the desserts, but it actually can include all the complex carbohydrates that when lumped can actually still be converted into glucose. Starch is a complex carbohydrates. It's like paper bill when it comes to money. But the moment it's digested in our system, it becomes glucose still, and that is still the same glucose that will increase your blood sugar, and that can lead into the varied effects when it comes to inflammation. Whenever you read food labels, remember that 4 grams of sugar equals to 1 teaspoon of sugar, okay? So did you know that a cup of rice will have 10 teaspoons of white sugar? So 1 cup of rice is around 45 to 50 grams of carbohydrates. This is a white rice. Some of you may ask, how about brown rice? So let's say brown rice would have a lot more fiber. So maybe it is down to around 43 grams. So maybe it's around 9.5 teaspoons of sugar. So congratulations, you save about 0.5 teaspoon of sugar whenever you take that brown rice. And the caveat also, whenever you take something this healthier alternative, is we tend to eat more of it. If you eat white rice, maybe you will eat 1 cup of rice. But since it's brown rice, maybe you'll take 2 cups or 1.5. So who knows? And how many times do you eat in a day? If you eat at least the recommended dietary recommendations for a standard Filipino with a counterpart of carbohydrates abroad or in other cultures, it can be in the form of bread or potato or wheat or oatmeal. That can be equivalent to 3 cups of rice, and that's already 30 teaspoons of white sugar. So the next time you say no to your sweets, to your soft drinks, to your sugar, but you never say no to rice. Just think you are still consuming them, just not in a sweet way. So, which fats to avoid and which ones to consume? I think this one was discussed a while ago, so we will just go through it. So we already know the difference between saturated fats and unsaturated fats by chemical structure, but the way we classify them, I think it is more important to know which ones are natural and which ones are factory made. Okay? So that's making it simple because there are saturated fats that are really harmful, but those are hydrogenated fats, the fats that are made in factories, not naturally occurring, and those are the ones that will make our cells unstable and prone to inflammation. So, bad fats. We start with this one. Soybean oil, canola oil. Imagine how many of us were fooled with canola oil saying it's heart healthy. Even until now, if you go in groceries, you can see all of these oils with a heart, saying it's good for your heart. But now we know that with oxidation, they are very prone to toxic formation, and that actually leads to a lot of heart disease. I know in my clinical practice that I've seen a lot of patients, elderly patients with very, very low cholesterol, but they still had heart attack. They still have stroke. So it's not the cholesterol level. It's really the inflammation that will happen in your body. So these oils are now known to be the toxic 8, the ones that will really kill us if we will not avoid them. And that's also the reason why we try to avoid eating out, because these oils are also the cheapest. And that's why they're the ones being used by most of the stores, the restaurants, unless it is a very health-conscious restaurant. So soybean oil, canola oil, corn oil, trans fats in the form of margarine, in the form of, now we already have vegetable lard. So lard we know is a pork fat, but there's now vegetable lard. So can you just imagine how they can distort everything just to make it appear healthy, just because it's from vegetable. But now, since we are, if you will think about it, our biology, we adapt more to where we are closest to. Between an animal and between a plant, where do you think is you are closely more related to? Animals, of course. We are under animals, we can run, but plants cannot run. And that's why they have these defensive toxins in them that when we overconsume them, it's actually gonna be toxic for us. So focusing on the good fats, avocado oil and avocado are healthier fats, but they are not the best when it comes to cooking. Same as nuts and seeds, eggs, especially the egg yolk is a healthy cholesterol. For me, I eat maybe an average of 3 to 6 eggs a day. And that's cooked in coconut oil. So imagine all the oils piling up there. But the thing is, I don't eat them with rice or bread. So I eat them alone or with other meats, other fats, but the healthier and natural ones. So coconut oil, again, it's the best one when it comes to cooking or even taking in raw. So wild-caught fish, which might not be that abundant in our area, extra virgin coconut oil, extra virgin olive oil, grass-fed meat, and grass-fed berries. Other oils that we consume, so just remember, if it's coming directly from a tree, from a fruit, without heat processing, without chemical processing, most likely it's a healthy one. It's something that's good to go. But if it's already packed, if it underwent a lot of processing, a lot of chemical manipulation, then most likely it's not good for you. And did you know that canola oil was first made for cars? So canola oil is Canada oil. So it's really an oil for industrial use, not for human consumption. It's just that they were able to find a way to remove the stinky odor to make it more palatable. And now they market it as the heart healthy oil. So when it comes to our nutrition, we promote healthy fats and we promote low carb nutrition. That is lowering carbohydrate and increasing, when you lower your carbohydrates, our macronutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So when you lower your carbohydrate, instantly you increase your proteins and increase your fat intake. That's why we are never afraid of eating fats as long as they are healthy and you eat them without those insulin spiking carbohydrate. Low carb nutrition, it is encompassing with a higher healthy fat intake. It lowers insulin, it lowers inflammation, it lowers oxidized LDL, it increases fat burning, and decreases fat buildup, especially in our organs. So in conclusion, choose the natural healthy fats only. Simply put, coconut over canola oil, if you have one thing to remember. And when it comes to sugar, remember, even the dietary recommendations now recommend only a sugar intake of about 4 servings or 4 teaspoons for children, 6 teaspoons for females, and about 9 teaspoons for male. But remember, they only emphasize as added sugar, okay? But again, we now know that complex carbohydrates can still be similarly equate to sugar. So 9 teaspoons of sugar is just roughly less than a cup of rice. So whenever you take more than a cup of rice, plus your soft drinks, plus your 3-in-1 coffee, plus your iced tea maybe, or fruit juices, that's really an overwhelming amount of sugar we put in our body. And it's okay if you still choose to do that way. Nobody is imposing you on anything, but I just hope you now know what's the answer. If ever you feel like, why am I sick? Why am I feeling tired? Why I feel older than yesterday? Why I have these aches and pains? It's most likely not on your genes, but try to see what's on your plate. So again, instead of lowering animal fats, we need to lower everything that spikes our blood sugar. These are the samples, common samples of food and the content of the sugar that they have in them per serving. So again, the next time you see rice or its counterpart, maybe it's a flatbread or a croissant or a mashed potato or a large French fries that's already free on upgrade on your favorite fast food, remember their sugar equivalent in them. So these are my sources. Thank you very much. I would like to invite you on the National Low Carb Day on October 1, 2023. If you're interested to know more, we also have lcfmasterclass.org. This is Dr. Josephine Grace Roja. Thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you nothing but good health. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph.